Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also help the show out by visiting thebittertruth.info, I-N-F-O, and there you could buy some fabulous swag to make your life better or support us on the Patreon link that's there. So it's nice to have people support the show. These things can be heard on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all the usual suspects at no charge, but the support is always appreciated. Today, I'm excited to have a guest friend of the show, been on before, former CIA counterterrorist chief in Pakistan and the first whistleblower that Obama put in the joint back in the day. And what was funny because he blew the whistle on the Bush administration and he didn't even give anybody anything. He just said some stuff on the news. John Kiriakou, how are you, man?
Hey, very well, thanks. Thanks for having me back, Abe.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on. So, it sounds like you got some legal victories before you jump into the main thing. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a slog, but over the course of the last 13 years, I've had my detractors, and in some cases, these detractors went too far. Mm-hmm. And I've connected with some really amazing attorneys over the last few years. Good. People like Harvard law professors and Georgetown law professors, and now, after being reactive and responsive for the last decade, I'm going to start going after people. I wish I could go into more detail.
I get it. No,
things are turning around, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I appreciate the generosity of you saying anything at all. And number one, number two, good for you, because I followed you before we even met cyber spacey or whatever you want to call it. But I've always admired you, and I thought you're a principled guy that. Yeah, I don't know if I would have taken what you took. Even the 23 months, I would have probably hung myself.
And, just as an aside, in August, I was offered a job that was like the job dropped out of heaven into my lap. And it was my big comeback. I was going to be the chief operating officer of a private equity firm based in Athens. I'm a dual U.S. Greek citizen now. And it was more money than I could ever have dreamt of. I gladly took the job. And then, 6 weeks into it, I realized this is a money laundering operation. Mm. And so I had to resign and I had to call the FBI, and, it's always something.
It's always something, man. I get it. Well, hey, man, listen. I know we got a little bit of time before you got to take off yourself. Now you're no longer doing Loud and Clear with Brian Becker, right? You guys.
I'm no longer doing Loud and Clear with Brian Becker. That was such a wonderful show, and I have such deep respect for Brian, even if we don't agree on everything politically. He's such a good, kind, good-hearted person. I learned a lot from him. But the show ran its course. Sure. It was, the contract was up is what it was. So we all left. They shut the show down sometime at the end of August, I think it was. I went into the private sector, as I just said. That didn't work out. I called Sputnik back and said, hey, I wouldn't mind having another show. And so they put me on in the same time slot, 4 to 6 p.m. with Lee Stranahan.
Good for you. And what's that show called?
That's called The Backstory.
The Backstory. Good times, then. All right. I'll put that in the...
It's much less newsy. It's a lot of... how can I say it? It's two guys drinking a beer, just talking about the day.
Yeah. And most of
it was much more newsy.
Yeah. And that's... I when I first started this almost 3 years ago now, I just didn't want it... I mean, obviously I'm going to talk about current events and this and that and the other, but I want it to be more evergreen. Where like if people go back and hear a show with you or Miko Paulette or somebody, regardless of when they hear it, they go, oh man, I didn't know that. Right. As opposed to, oh yeah, well, this already happened and he already went to jail for that or whatever. Right. And then plus, cause I'm only on a couple of days a week anyway. So I didn't want it to be so newsy, but speaking of evergreen topics, I guess we could talk about Avril Haines, who's the new Biden director of national intelligence. And she seems like the rest of this cabinet, like a nice prize. I
was very, very disappointed. Yeah. And remember, she was the first Biden national security appointee. Right. So Avril actually doesn't have a long history in intelligence. But the history that she has is dark.
Right.
She she was up on the Hill when Biden was on the Hill. Biden took her to the White House when he became vice president. She and Tony Blinken both.
Right.
And Avril became the general counsel for the National Security Council. Now, in that position, she was working directly for John Brennan. Dangerous in and of itself.
I was going to say your old buddy.
My old buddy, John Brennan.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic.
It's a whole other we've talked about it. So yeah.
Yeah. So, John was responsible for the kill list.
Right.
Which was a list of people that he would come up with every Tuesday who were to be killed that week, usually with a drone, sometimes with a hit squad that the agency would send out.
Right.
And so Avril was the lawyer who approved the kill list. And there are press reports saying that, and I mean like legitimate press reports from the Post and the Times and the Journal and places like that,
sure,
saying that Avril frequently would take a call in the middle of the night saying, we've got the guy in our sights, request permission to launch. And it was Avril who gave permission to launch.
Wow.
And, she was so good at that job that when John became CIA director, he took Avril with him. And she was the deputy director of the CIA.
And there, she didn't even really tackle any of these things. She just kind of went after hacks and leaking, right?
That was it. And, that's very much a John Brennan thing to do.
Right.
John Brennan was known for having a Nixonian obsession with national security leaks. So that's what she did. Now, another thing that Avril did that bothers me very much is that it was Avril who gave the legal justification for CIA officers breaking into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computer system to try to spy on the investigators there to see what they were collecting in the run-up to the completion of the torture report. Dianne Feinstein referred that to the Justice Department for prosecution. It was never taken up, never even investigated.
Wow.
And she got away with it.
Right.
But she never had to answer questions about the kill list. She never had to answer questions about breaking into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computer system.
Right.
Never.
See, and to your point that you mentioned Blinken earlier. He's another one, that Biden pretty much gave his entire career. And then when I watched his entire career, and then when I watched part of his confirmation hearing, I was blown away. That phrase, a stop clock and tell the time right twice a day. I was shocked that Rand Paul, actually had a spine to say anything. And then the things that he went after him for, because other Republicans didn't even ask those kinds of questions.
No.
And it just seems like this kind of shit just gets rewarded where guys like you or Snowden or Assange get punished.
We get punished. And the reason why even Republicans didn't challenge Tony Blinken in his confirmation hearing is that there is no difference between a neoliberal foreign policy and a neoconservative foreign policy.
Right.
It's interventionist, no matter who's in the White House.
Right.
That foreign policy is interventionist. You said correctly that Tony Blinken owes his entire career to Joe Biden. I knew Tony when I was up on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I even took his desk when he finally went to the White House. But he started off as a junior staff member with Joe Biden. Right. For years, he worked in Biden's personal office in the Senate, and then he worked his way up through the ranks in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when Biden was the chairman. He became the staff director. Then he became briefly Biden's national security advisor as vice president, and then deputy national security advisor. So the guy's been around, forever.
Right.
Forever.
Right.
And he parrots the Biden neoliberal foreign policy. I mean, what's the first foreign policy thing Joe Biden did? Literally on his first day as president, he sent additional troops to Syria.
Oh, and on the same day, doubled down on Venezuela with the 30 million, the 30 million that Trump left in the last COVID bill.
Yes.
We dedicated 30 million to coup Venezuela again. Mm-hmm. And Joe Biden just vowed to double down on Venezuela, recognizing Juan Guaido as the interim president. When I think it's down to 3 countries now that recognize him: Israel, us, and I think, Malaysia or some shit. There's no credible governments that, you know what I mean? There's nobody recognizing this. And him and his entire faction got voted out of office in December.
Yeah. Even his own supporters don't recognize him anymore.
Right. So why are we still pimping this dead horse and saying it runs? It's just, And he's under investigation by the FBI for hacking 90 million or ganking $90 million out of the money out of the monies he was given. It's like,
this is exactly what Ahmed Chalabi did when we decided that he was going to be the president of Iraq.
That's right.
Next thing you know, $60 million in CIA money is missing.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
I mean, let me ask you something, because it just seems like you said it a second ago. It's interventionist. It doesn't matter if it's just neo. We should make up our own term and call it neo interventionist, because whether they like gay people or don't like gay people, the one thing they do like to do is invade other countries and take their shit for free.
That's right.
And we just got Lloyd Austin, a general.
Yes.
Who Mattis was a general, and he's also a former Raytheon guy who.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
You took the words right out of my mouth. He's a 4-star general and a Raytheon lobbyist.
Yeah.
And guess what? He's like the third one in a row who's been a defense industry lobbyist.
Right. And
there's nobody else in America who's qualified to be the Secretary of Defense.
And had to get a waiver, like Mattis had to get a waiver.
And had to get a waiver.
Because we put the stop on that shit in 1948. Eisenhower had to get a waiver, but but still, just those are only 3 guys in history that had to get a waiver since 1948 to actually be a former military guy to run for office or be appointed in a cabinet.
That's actually quite important to me. People used to ask me all the time, especially when Petraeus was the director of CIA, what my thoughts were on having generals run the CIA. Well, I'm opposed to generals running the CIA, the ODNI, DOD. I'm opposed to generals in any of these national security positions, national security advisor, for the very simple reason that generals became generals by saying, yes, sir.
That's right.
Right. What you need in a position like that is somebody who can say, Mr. President, let me tell you why that's a terrible idea.
Right.
And stand up. Right. Generals don't stand up.
Right.
Not to the commander in chief. They don't.
No, they don't.
They say, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we don't want generals in positions like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're making sense. I mean, and I just watched Dr. Strangelove again last night because I haven't seen it in 5 years.
It's on Netflix right now. It's awesome.
Yeah, I caught it on Amazon. I was just like, oh my god! I lent my DVD with the bonus DVD and with Kubrick, and I never got it back. So, long story, but the George C. Scott character in there is exactly like what you're saying.
Yes,
he's just nervously chewing gum, and the president's asking these questions that he can't answer because clearly somebody fucked up. Well, isn't it true that if I have the chain of command, then I'm supposed to authorize nuclear weapons? Well, that's right, sir. Well, then why didn't that happen? It was like a who's on first, but with nukes.
Yes.
And it just seems like it, and then, but kind of back to Haynes, because this is kind of my theory. I mean, I can't prove it because it hasn't happened yet, but with a Kamala Harris presidency, which, let's be honest, if Biden's not drooling into a rubber diaper by summer, I'll be shocked. And I am taking bets. I might lose some money.
Yes. I've said the same thing.
Yeah, he's off but so she comes in and it just seems to me like these are the machinations of turning the DOJ into a modern day Stasi. Right. Where this time it's willingly, because we give our information for we put our face on avatars. Amazon has a contract. Bose Allen Hamilton has a surveillance contract. Google has a contract with the CIA, NSA. So does Twitter. So does Facebook. How bad do you think it could possibly be? Because Democrats are going to go to sleep. The so-called liberal in this country is going to go to sleep under a Harris administration.
Oh my God. Yes. Where do you even start? First of all, Kamala Harris is no liberal. She is no progressive. Remember, this is a woman who spent most of her career as a prosecutor.
Yep. And
imagine how many lives she ruined, how many families she ruined by seeking the longest possible sentence for first-time nonviolent drug offenses. So let's not pretend that she's some enlightened liberal. She's not. Secondly, it's like every president or would-be president wants to put his or her personal stamp on foreign policy. And how do you do that other than sending troops somewhere? Right. Look at Barack Obama, who was supposed to be the great liberal savior, right?
Right.
And he kept us in Iraq and Afghanistan. He put us in Somalia, in Libya, in Syria, in Yemen, in countless Saharan and sub-Saharan countries. We're not even really sure what all of our special forces troops are doing in those countries.
Right.
So I would expect more of exactly the same from President Biden or President Harris.
Yeah. And
there's no reason to think that anything would change.
See, and this is why this is what frustrates me. I live in Austin, Texas, right? And the big crack they always make is, well, yeah, you guys like California, you're so liberal. Yeah, we're like California. We got a bunch of shithead, chewy blue people. That's what I call them. I have like 4 friends that think like you and I do, right? And meaning like some of them are, leaning a little bit on the right side, but they at least think, and they don't start calling you names just because you don't agree with them. That's, what I mean? Like my friends that voted for Trump, they're not like the classic Trumper people, right? And my friends that, and then I got friends that are more like me that think both sides are corrupt, both sides are full of shit, and you just like insist on having your spirit animal, and get mad when I punch your teddy bear. Right. So, but that's the challenge I have with what's going on is this cabinet is almost identical resume wise to the Trump cabinet.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, totally. The only place where I'm just slightly optimistic is Merrick Garland. Because he's not really a political animal.
Right.
And so I'm slightly optimistic that he'll be able to keep DOJ independent.
Hopefully,
but when it comes to, a minute ago, you raised the issue of surveillance, state surveillance. Mm-hmm. If you could spend a month in London, mm-hmm. oh my God, you'll see state surveillance.
Oh yeah.
It's ridiculous. They're the most surveilled country in the world. Right. Sure. The UK is. Yeah. Well, we're headed right for that.
Sure.
We're going to have cameras everywhere. We already have cameras everywhere. How do you think so many people from the Capitol riots were arrested so quickly? It was because of facial recognition software.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just people ratting them out from seeing their pictures on Facebook.
Right.
It was facial recognition software. All the feds had to do was take stills from the videos that we saw from the news and feed it into their facial recognition database. That's Remember, they have our pictures from driver's licenses. They have our pictures from Facebook and from Google and from YouTube and TikTok. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to figure out who people are.
Absolutely.
We essentially just give them the information.
We give them the info. We just the Stasi, whoever ran the Stasi back in the day is probably spinning in his grave right now. If he knew it would be this easy.
Yeah, serious.
Instead of going 1984, he'd have gone Brave New World. No. Let me give you this vibrator that's going to take your picture at the same time. Here, have it, and people would have bought it, right?
And you don't even have to pay people. You don't have to pay sources.
No,
we put all the information out there on ourselves.
That's right. What Facebook did, I remember when it came out, and I got talked into getting on it. A good friend of mine tried to talk, and I wasn't a very social media person. And it was remember when MySpace was the big deal?
Sure.
And it was such a pain in the ass to use. Like if somebody liked you, you had to go through this act of Congress to accept them. Or if you went to go like them or add them as a friend, it was like, it was a pain in the ass. I think I had like 10 friends. I didn't care. And then my friend said, no, you got to try this. It's easier. It's better. All it was it was easier for Facebook to take our info.
Yes.
That's all it was. And they sell it.
And remember, Facebook doesn't give us the platform out of the goodness of their hearts. They monetize our personal data.
Right.
Yeah, I'll give you another example too, because they go farther than they even admit to. Mm-hmm. I mean, they'll come out and admit it if you ask them in front of a congressional panel. But I've gone through periods where I've gotten a lot of threats, right? If I go on TV, I go on Fox News or I go on MSNBC or whatever, I get threats. Right. There are a lot of crazy people out there.
That's right.
So I was talking to a buddy of mine on the phone who happens to be a firearms instructor. And he said, have you ever had a concealed carry permit? And I said, yeah, I had a concealed carry until 2012, but then, I have a felony conviction now, so I can't own a gun anymore. That's why I need a pardon. Well, it's one of the reasons why I need a pardon.
Well, yeah, a bunch of reasons.
And he said, yeah, it's too bad you can't carry a gun. And, we ended our conversation. 5 minutes later, I go onto Facebook and every single ad in my Facebook feed is for a concealed carry class. Every single ad.
Oh, yeah.
So they're even listening on the phone.
Oh, they're listening when your phone is turned off. I play in a band out here in town, right? Saturday nights we jam, and we're like a cover band. We play like Rage Against the Machine and shit like that, and get drunk. And so one night we're at practice, and my phone is usually on sleep, and we were talking about a bass that I used to have. It was a Fender Jazz bass. It was a 1980 cream color tortoiseshell pickguard bitchin' bass.
Nice.
Next day I wake up, turn on my Facebook, and I got 5 different ads with people playing that bass, that specific bass with the specific color scheme. one girl's like giving lessons on this base, and I'm going, isn't that interesting how that base came up? And I was just talking about it last night. I must have had 8 or 9 in a row.
With your phone in sleep mode.
My phone was in sleep mode. This is why when people say, oh my God, I'm so paranoid of, I'm like, I if I'm dating somebody, and let's just be candid, sometimes you send pictures back and forth because that's what people who date do. And then she could say, oh my God, what if they're going to see it? I go, oh, count on it. They are seeing it.
They've already seen it.
Let's give the poor guys in the van a good show. That's what I say. And I'm a half decent writer. So the fiction is just, is penthouse forum level material for weeks. Knock yourselves out, boys. That's my taxpayer contribution to your cause, to your entertainment, because you're online. I'm online. We have a show, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter how many viewers you got or don't have. It's like, you're putting yourself out there. They track you with the algorithms and everything else. And I'm also getting to this sinister point where I'm not trusting certain people based on their language. And I'm sure you've been there for a while, Yeah,
you can't imagine the emails and calls I get from people who want to offer me a job. And the job is always, it's consulting, and it's always just baiting me to violate federal law.
Right. To get you in trouble, to keep you from your case moving forward and getting your just desserts. Actually,
it happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got a couple more minutes here before I have to start wrapping up. But, earlier you mentioned John Brennan. It just seems that for at least the last 70 years, foreign policy is domestic policy to me, because we spend 2/3 of our budget on military, not defense, but military.
Yes. More than the next 8 largest countries combined.
And if we cut down to $300 billion a year, we'd still be able to. We don't need to buy more weapons. We could just maintain. But it just seems like no matter who's in office, it's just the same bullshit over and over, and they just dress it up different. They're going to dress up China now, and we've had ships in the South China Sea now for what, 8 or 9 months.
Right.
Floating around because why? We're concerned
about Asia.
Yeah, because we're concerned about Uyghurs. We've been bombing real Muslims for 20. It doesn't mean these people aren't Muslims, but we've been bombing Muslims for 20 years. Now we're concerned about Chinese Muslims.
Yeah, right.
We just want their oil and natural gas because they've been pulling out of there for 3 years in their own backyard.
Yes.
But people go on the party thing, and if you say what I just said, that Biden Harris won't be any different than Trump Pence, they get really angry.
And the sad truth is, and I say this as a former 3rd-generation Democrat, I'm no longer a Democrat, but the sad truth is that the Trump foreign policy was more traditionally Democratic than the Obama-Biden foreign policy.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Well, that's why they had to keep coming up with crap like Russians paying to kill soldiers and all that shit. Because every time you try to pull back a little bit, and he was a chicken shit as a human being anyway, but anytime you try to pull back the slightest bit, something that made him unlikable would pop out, and he would freak out and reverse course.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it just doesn't seem like it's ever going to go away. I mean, people ask me all the time, well, how do you think it's going to have to? How do you think the change is going to come? How do you think the change is going to come?
Right. You know what? I'm not sure that in the near term, change will come. I think that Donald Trump did such a good job at energizing mainstream Democrats and so many people came out to vote. Like, we had such ridiculously high voter turnout by American standards that I think this neoliberal interventionist foreign policy has been cemented in the mainstream.
Yeah.
When, for example, Abe, when Biden sent these troops to Syria on January the 20th, did it even make the media? I mean, I had to look for the information. It wasn't in the Washington Post. No. It wasn't in the New York Times, because I read them cover to cover every day.
Nope.
But it's nobody really cares.
Nobody cares. And when you say anything, it's kind of like what Nixon had intended came true. Get rid of the draft, quit drafting middle-class white kids.
Yeah.
And no one's going to give a fuck. And that's it. My friends here, my liberal friends here, that are like, well, Bolivia, he was there 14 years. That was a long time. Well, Angela Merkel ran Germany for 15 years. How come we didn't pull a coup in Germany?
That's right.
Was it because she was white? And then when you say, well, I don't want to send kids to Bolivia, like, well, fuck it, I don't care. Well, you don't care because you don't have a kid in service. Mm-hmm. You don't care because it wasn't your kid got bombed in an apartment building by us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this lack of empathy. And as long as you're going to,
I know we're short on time, but
yeah, no,
I said this in you just triggered something.
Yeah, please.
I just said this in an interview the other day. One of the things that I learned when I was the chief of counterterrorism operations in Pakistan after 9/11 is that all of the low-level Al-Qaeda fighters I was responsible for capturing, and there were many, dozens of them.
Right.
They all said the same thing. They all told the same story. And the story was that they had grown up in some isolated village in their home country, whatever it was, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Algeria, whatever. They had no job prospects. They had no job skills. They were illiterate. No man would want his daughter to marry somebody like this,
right?
Because, why would you? Right. The guy can't read and write. He's got no job skills. So the local imam went to them and said, hey, what are you doing in this village? You should go to Afghanistan and make jihad against the Americans, right? We'll give you $500 a month. And then if you're martyred, we'll give your family a $500 martyrdom bonus, right? So they went to Afghanistan. They didn't read the Quran. They didn't even know the prayers. They didn't have any beef against the United States until we bombed their village.
Right.
Until we killed their cousin or their brother or their grandfather or whatever it was.
That's right.
And then they decided they were up for the fight.
That's right. That's right. And that is exactly the point. And that is exactly the goal that has been achieved here. I mean, especially when you look at Afghanistan, that was up until Carter, a traditionally pretty passive bunch of people. They weren't involved in, except for overturning the Ottoman Empire, which everybody was fighting those guys, in World War I. I mean, for 67 years, they weren't doing anything. No. And to your point, that's what is so frustrating is that people will just look sideways as long as it does not affect them.
Absolutely right.
And even the crime bill. I mean, I lost quite a few Black friends of mine that I knew for a long time. One guy I knew 15 years called me, left a voicemail threatening to kick my ass.
Just like that.
Because I'm going, dude, because I asked him online, do you not know what the crime bill is? And he got mad at me. I don't give a shit about the crime bill. I just want Trump out of there. I go, do you know what the crime bill is? Tell me. And then I'll just accept your philosophy. But Christ, it's like, it's just ridiculous. But listen, man, I know you got to get going. Again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Good luck with the new show. And folks, my guest is, I appreciate you, man. Hey man, I'm tickled anytime you say you're going to come on because you're just a super smarty pants guy. So I like that.
A lot of fun. Thank you, folks.
My guest has been John Kiriakou, and hopefully you heard some stuff that made a lot of sense. And if it didn't, I don't give a shit. Because that's why it's called Facts versus Opinion. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.